Hello, everybody. This is Madhog, and wow, I have not talked to myself in a long while. As in, recorded myself talking to myself or to the void ahead of me in a long time, so I feel a bit out of practice. Nevertheless, I thought it was necessary to have a little blurb ahead of this episode, mostly because as you might have guessed if you bothered to read the description of this video, we talk about a whole lot of important, serious social and political issues with essentially no filter. We say what we mind, rather we don't mind what we say, you get the idea, we say what we want to say. And I am not apologizing for what we said, because I feel it needed to be said in many ways, but I do want to apologize instead for the unbalanced audio quality of this episode. We don't have the best equipment, that much is clear. We don't do this for a living, it's merely an hobby, or a way to kill the time, yes, as we wait for the inevitable end, that is. Nevertheless, the biggest point of contention, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm bothered to acknowledge, is that the audio from the game was a bit too loud this time around compared to our commentary. And since this entire portion of the game takes place during a rather heated arena shooting fight, all the noise and sound can get a bit distracting and can occasionally drown out the commentary, which feels a bit disrespectful to the gravitas of what is actually being discussed in this podcast. But we'll try to do better next time. We haven't done this in a while, and maybe some settings have been resetted. I do hope you will enjoy this podcast, this episode that we recorded not too long ago this time around. It's only been a week since this will be posted, so yay for progress. It's not being a whole month this time around, so we are going to rather aggressively talk about uncomfortable things that need to be discussed. We are not the most qualified people to do so, but we will do it regardless. So I hope you enjoy this politically charged podcast with an obvious left-leaning agenda. Oops, spoilers. Yes, well, enjoy the show, I suppose.
I'm just gonna get into the game because not gonna like any of this.
You seem to be in a rather moody mood. Oh gosh, cancel it, go back, let me redo the intro.
Cannot go back. Dang it.
Okay,
you know,
so
let's go with what happened last time, because
last time the VAR died a lot in this specific map, and that's it for the gameplay portion of our gaming podcast.
Yes.
Now, let's actually talk about something else that needs to be addressed right about now.
Everything.
Well, yes, but that comes later. I'm talking about a certain other quandary. Yes, let's call it that. I don't even know if it's the appropriate word, but essentially, if you recall, last time we recorded a podcast, when was it again?
It was
August?
It was definitely a long while ago.
Was it in August? Oh, jeez.
Yeah, oh geez, indeed.
And then it came out a whole month later.
Yep.
Devar, care to explain why?
Because, oh, bugger. I believe there was a fair few issues with the video. I actually forgot the reason now. It's been so long. I just remember, now that you mention it, that there was a... let's see. Well, I just wish I remembered now. Having a headache on top of it does not help matters.
So, as far as I can remember myself, because again, it's been a couple of months, let's be generous, that last podcast was cursed in many ways. Essentially, you seemed to have run into a problem, an issue that you usually tend to run into whenever we record a podcast that's, let's say, longer than 1 hour.
Yeah. Because it took so long that basically the file size was, well, big. And I had to
Big, chunky file, which is hard to send over someone else through WeTransfer, which is the means that we utilize for that particular exchange, and it is especially taxing if you live in a house where everyone uses internet.
Yes, and for some reason the internet service provider, I will not say who, decides, your upload speed should be lowered for some strange, ungodly reason.
You save money?
No.
Okay, it sounds similar to the way they were scamming us with the old contract and whatnot. In my house, that is.
Yeah.
But anyway, so eventually, with a lot of patience on my behalf, I would like you to know this, I would like this to be put on record. I have the patience of a saint. Alright? I waited a month for Devar to finally find a way and a time, the appropriate time and way, to send that file in multiple parts, by the way. So I was finally able to put it together and release it publicly 1 month after it was recorded.
Yeah.
Which, it's pretty bad and unprofessional, but hey, at least I did not have to wait a whole year to see that file, unlike something else.
I do not want to remember any of that.
1 year ago, just about, we recorded a session of Armello, a playthrough of Armello with me, Devar, and Demonox.
Oh!
And a few months later, we also recorded a couple of more sessions. But the point is, it's been 1 year.
And I finally got to.
Yes, it's finally here, and as you can see, I finally was able to release it somewhat on my YouTube channel this past week. I'm going to date this podcast immediately. I don't even know when it's going to come out. At this point, it doesn't matter. We have long since resigned ourselves in the inevitability that we will never be caught up with current events because this podcast has its own cryptic, esoteric time, shelf life, and whatnot.
I feel like I'm in Space Invaders, but a 3D version. Oh wait, that sucked. Never mind.
Oh yes, it existed. I just remembered it existed. It was bad.
Let's forget it existed.
Well, it's not a good idea to use high caliber explosive weaponry on close range. I'm so smart.
What? Oh, come on, really? Ah.
So, in lieu of more tales of absurd technical issues out of our control, we were supposed to record this very episode a week ago from today. But what happened that one time, Devar? Would you care to also explain that?
Serious Sam wouldn't load up, wouldn't open up at all.
Yes. And the reason for it was?
Crow Team's kind of screwed up and had to fix it.
That's just, wow, a sign from the gods above. Maybe we shouldn't play this game anymore. Anyway, so instead of loading up a second game, or maybe the sequel, which worked just fine, that's when I said to Devar, hey, maybe this is a good time as any for you to finally send me that Armello file that I've been wanting for a whole year! And so he did. And Espio did.
Yes. I'm just going to let's just introduce him to our little friend.
Oh, I get it. It's a clever reference.
I think I should also probably mention. Oh my god! Did I actually get through them?
Save.
So, I want to actually confess something else I've not shared with you about.
I have my arms firmly crossed. I'm listening.
I've actually also been dealing with, anxiety attacks for a while. So
okay, I thought it was going to be something funny, but now
No.
I feel like a bit of a jerk.
No, don't feel like a jerk. I've kept this a secret from people because,
Okay, if you feel comfortable in talking publicly about this, it's fine. If you don't, we can always cut this out. But
don't worry, I just want to at least say that, I've been kind of dealing with my own, issues, emotionally speaking, because, that's the kind of person I am. It's nothing serious. So it's not a situation that...
is it fair to say you've been having a case of the old existential dread?
I wouldn't even call it existential dread. It's more like I don't know how to explain it. That's the problem, because it just kind of comes and goes as of late for the past fair few years, where I would get anxiety attacks or feel stressed or not want to do anything.
I think me and you are on a similar boat in that regard. I don't know if it's because of my autistic brain, but I do have those moments in which I am overcome by anxiety for the smallest and darnest things. I don't have outright panic attacks, but whenever there is a situation or a scenario where something is slightly off the customary, the world I'm used to, being a personal insignificant matter or the preoccupation over the sociopolitical international climate over the next 4 years, that's where I get stressed and sometimes even anxious. And my brain goes places. It's never outright or outward in that scenario unless it's something that require a more visceral reaction from me. But yes, I think I can sort of understand and relate to what you seem to be going through.
Yeah.
And speaking of anxiety over the international socio-political climate, let's get to the topics of this podcast, everybody.
Yes, the topics that the serious part of the topics.
The serious part of the serious podcast.
Okay, so what should we go with first then?
I want to address the result of the American elections because Even though this happened technically already a couple of weeks ago, it will still be very topical up until January.
Yeah.
You can bet on that.
Yeah.
For many, many uncomfortable, terrible, disgraceful, why are we even alive reasons. Yes.
And why is this guy won't shut up reasons?
If only that was the only problem. Okay, so I feel the best way for me to explain my feelings, my very raw emotional feelings about not just the American elections themselves, but how I've been feeling over the past 4 years, where I suddenly had an influx of more radical, left-leaning ideologues in my brain. For some reason, I wonder what caused it. I'm going to do something that I usually don't do. I'm going to read something that I wrote, that I posted on Twitter, that I think better encompasses what my feelings on the matter are. So yes, that means it is finally time, the time in which Madhog quotes himself.
Okay.
And let me just get it up, get it over, find it, as it were.
Let me try and get. Let's see. I need to take a look at something while you're getting that thing, because I need to. That's it. I need to, because I have to remind myself how to do this every time. Yeah, Netriska. Okay. Right.
Okay, here it is. This was posted on November the 6th, 2020. So it was in the first week of the hell elections, as some clever people have dubbed it. And by that point, it was obvious who was going to win. So I felt confident enough to post this entire rant, which I'm going to read right now. And yes, once again, I am quoting myself. Isn't that great?
Yes, it's great. Also, I got the minigun.
I have some raw feelings over the USA election 2020, all in hashtag, of course. Every 4 years, us from the rest of the world get to helplessly watch as the international political climate adjusts on whether or not this banana republic elects a regular gobshite or a gormless fascist gobshite. So that's a strong start right there.
Yeah, it's a very strong one.
No, please, let us know how you really feel about America.
Ah, bugger.
It's a frustrating helplessness that hits me on a profound existential level, especially after everything I have learned about the country's utter bullpucky of an electoral system and long history of openly abused power over the course of the years. Centuries, in fact. On this year alone, voters had to deal with the sabotage of the postal system, armed nutjobs, a literal pandemic that facilitated voter suppression more than usual, I mean, missing ballots, frauds, etc. All of that in addition to the regular, racially, demographically biased voter suppression, which happens every time, the omnipresent electoral college and middle-of-the-road conservative Grandpa Joe Malarkey being the absolute worst choice to put against the Bad Hair Day Hitler. I don't know if I'm being too subtle with these names.
Maybe just a tad.
Yet, in spite of all that, 45 still lost. His failure amidst overwhelmingly favorable odds is astronomical and should be engraved on his tomb when the time inevitably comes. That said, the loss was narrow, and the sociopolitical damage is still immeasurable. Let's not dwell in the illusion that 45 was a deviation from the political establishment. He was the most establishment president imaginable, an organic result of centuries' worth of increasingly more unlimited power concentrated in the hands of a single man. That an openly racist demagogue would be elected president of the Banana Republic was not a flaw in the system, it was the system working as it was intended by the founding fathers, who cared about protecting their wealth and controlling the poor. I might just be a tad miffed. Just a tad.
Just a tad.
And so, while the utterly ineffectual neoliberals will be busy celebrating their victory, I don't have enough quotation marks in the world, without ever acknowledging their own faults or the actual painstaking work done by a voter base that deserves so much better, the Republicans will simply wait. Because, unlike the Democrats, who keep trying to appeal to the moderate right like the out-of-touch morons they are, the Republican Party knows who their actual voters look, dress, and smell like. I predict this. In 4 years, when Joe Malarkey will be done disappointing everyone who put their hopes in him, much like Obama did, someone much worse than 45 is going to emerge from the boiling cauldron of the Republican coven, and history will repeat itself. That is, unless something drastically changes in the political DNA of the Banana Republic. That is my faint hope, at least, that all the activism, the protesting, the literal war that's sweeping over the country might lead to a significant change. In the meantime, let's bask in the euphoria. We've earned it. Rather, the American people have earned it. Naturally, all these observations and musings are going to age terribly if 45 still manages to find a way to be El Generalissimo. Let's hope not. At this point in time, I feel confident in saying that 45 is out of the picture. Most of the party, which he threw under the bus, like the moron he is, has already moved past him. Even his own family is telling him, 45, stop being an idiot! Which is something that's impossible for 45 at this point in his life and career.
Yeah.
So, 230,000 people died while he played golf.
Yeah.
This year alone. Anger, fury doesn't even begin to describe it.
No, it doesn't describe how I feel either, honestly.
So that was my whole entire rant, my whole entire tangent. Basically 4 years of frustration and outrage condensed into a set number of tweets. And if you want to read them for yourself, I cannot imagine why wouldn't you want to read them for yourself. Really? I'm going to leave a link in the description. But essentially, the long and short of it is that 45, and yes, I'm just going to call him 45 because I am at that point in which the mere mention of his name makes my blood boil to such a degree that I thought improbable. I mean, I hated Bush, but never to this level. And Bush sucked! But to say that it is all his fault would be diminishing the problems that the entire American socio-political infrastructure has done over the course of the centuries. He is a product of that. And unfortunately, as I already pointed out, I don't think Grandpa Joe is the guy to do that. You cannot really oppose fascism with a more moderate version of conservatism. Or, as it is mostly known nowadays, centrism, really.
Yeah.
Or neoliberalism, whichever makes you hate the Democrats the most. Anyway, I can already hear the voices in my head. They counsel me, they understand, etc., etc. They would be telling me, but Madhog, why do you care so much about the politics of a country that's not your own? First of all, shut the hell up, you idiot. You know nothing. Go back to your basement, you neck-bearded asswipe. No, please, Madhog, tell us how you really feel. And secondly, whenever an idiot in charge of the so-called
free world?
Yes, the capital of the free world, if you will, whenever an idiot in charge of all that power, of all that cultural impact, that globalizing imperialistic phenomenon known as the US of A, does or say something that's less than ideal, that might cause a war somewhere else or spiral certain far-right movements out of control in certain parts of the world, we all suffer for it.
It's a domino effect that everyone keeps
Yes.
ignoring.
Most people don't understand that we don't live in the Middle Ages anymore, where something that happens in one country or empire does not really affect the rest of the world, because we were not as easily connected.
No,
But
we're,
now there
we're
is-
deeply ingrained because of finances with each other.
Yes, there is a little thing called the free market, made possible by capitalism, made possible by American globalization. So we're all connected somewhat in some way. So anything that happens in one country might influence directly or indirectly certain political and social economical outcomes in a neighboring country or a country that's part of the same union, which serves me as a perfect segue to talk about just what in the name of Frigidaire is happening in Poland right now. Let's be clear about something right off the bat. This is getting easily overshadowed by the results of the American election, which I get, but it's a much, much bigger deal than really international news outlets would make it out to be. Because what happened in Poland is something that's not too far away from happening, oh, well, I don't know, the UK? Yes.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure you're next on that regard. But let's go back, let's backpedal a little bit and talk about the Polish situation. The government's far-right agenda led to a massive rollback to LGBTQ rights in that country, which was met reasonably with backlash. And not just the trans people, which are the hot argument of the moment, with all the TERFs in the UK just campaigning and wanting to debate their existence, a whole disgusting proposition.
Yeah, it's a disgusting outlook on life.
Well, Poland went nightmare mode on that whole ordeal and just skipped to the entirety of the queer community, which now, oh my gosh, this looks bad.
Yes, it was. I was kind of hoping to rush into there, but seems I'm not gonna have that dream.
Right.
Let me quickly...
So, like I said, the Polish situation, rollback, massive rollback on LGBTQ rights, which led to backlash. And in the middle of that backlash, the government thought it would be a great idea to roll back on women's rights as well. Because, it was there. Just take the low-hanging fruit. It was there. There is a pandemic going on. This is the perfect time to swiftly enact patriarchal
nonsense.
Backwater nonsense, yes. Except when they did do that, the backlash was a little bit larger than anticipated. It's a massive riot and protest sweeping over the country that was not slowed down in the slightest by the pandemic. It was such a huge civil counter-offense that it led the government, or at least that's where I was last time I informed myself, that it led the government to reconsider, maybe not
being assholes,
do that, and specifically reconsider not to, abolish abortion, because that's the heart of the current problem right now. After rolling back on LGBTQ rights, they decided it's time to roll back on women's rights and make abortion illegal. Not a lot of people were cool with that.
Jeez, I wonder why.
That's actually indicative of a bigger problem, and a case study in its own right. They moved too fast in doing that. Clearly. That's not too dissimilar from what has happened in Hungary earlier this year, also during the pandemic, also made easier and facilitated by the pandemic. They had a huge rollback on LGBTQ rights and a massive, relatively slow, but significant rise of conservative Christian values of what a family should look like.
Yeah. Oh.
And what's happened in both Poland and Hungary, and what is happening right now in both Poland and Hungary, it's essentially what some people want to happen in the UK as well, and eventually the rest of Europe. I'm going to sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist, but this is actually true. Not a lie, not a freaking invention. Christian far-right organizations, such as the Heritage Foundation, directly financing groups such as the LGB Alliance and the various TERFs organizations in the UK and Ireland right now, to essentially push their patriarchal agenda, to roll back the last 50 years of social and civil rights progress. And you see the result of that in Poland and Hungary. On that note, I want to make something clear. Something clear about bigotry that should have been clear for most people, but it inexplicably is not. There is no such a thing as a compartmentalized, categorized form of bigotry. The people who hate women, the people who hate trans people, the people who are racist, the people who are homophobic and transphobic and all of the above, they are the same people? Really? All these hate groups that are financed by the Heritage Foundation and get a lot of momentum thanks to all the news media outlets owned by Rupert Murdoch, which are a fair few in your country as well, they all seem to operate under the same agenda, which is to slowly but surely make the world rotate to their own tune again, to make the patriarchy great again, if you will. The people who are right now trying to erase trans people with made-up bullpucky like the bathroom threat.
Yeah.
And all that idiotic propagandistic narrative. These are the same people who tried to combat gay marriage 15 years ago. And they are probably the same people who tried to oppose women's rights and rights to abortion 20 years prior to that. And would you look at what happened in Poland? They erased LGBTQ rights, and then, eager to go to the next phase of the plan, so to speak, they moved too fast, declared abortion illegal, hoping to use the pandemic as a way to do that quietly. But it was not quiet at all, because people noticed, and wouldn't you know it, they noticed so hard that something is being done about it. Because, as history shows us, the only effective way to force positive change in the world is to protest as loud and as numerously as possible. Because otherwise, no progress would be ever made. Without people protesting in the 60s, we would still be stuck in the 50s, culturally speaking, which is really what people like Rupert Murdoch or the Koch brothers or the Heritage Foundation and all those rich, old, conservative billionaire families and oil tycoons as well would want the world to look like, because progress, social progress and political progress, is actually bad for their businesses. Oil tycoons especially hate the idea of people realizing that they are destroying the world, because climate change is bad for business, so let's pretend it doesn't exist, even though they knew it existed for the better part of 40 years at least. And this is the part in which I sound like a crazy person, and I hate that I sound like a crazy person, but it has to be said.
Yeah.
All these hate groups and organizations running hotshots of easily targetable demographics such as trans people or queer communities and everything in between. They are working tirelessly for the benefit of such entities as the Heritage Foundation, because it keeps on putting cracks on all that progress that was made and is being made in spite of everything, in spite of their efforts, which eventually would ideally produce a significant slowdown or a halting of said social progress, which is beneficial for them and their businesses and relevancy. The free market, the capitalistic free market, will tell you that it's best for business to pander and cater to as many demographics as possible, to go on with their empty platitudes, because it means more money if we can have more people under the slavery of capitalism. But that doesn't really apply to such entities as oil tycoons or very rich religious organizations. Those are people whose stranglehold on the world is determined by how ignorant people are of how powerful they are. We need to quietly and cleverly return to the good old days of the patriarchy, where women were in kitchens and could not have abortions and gay people didn't exist, so that we can keep on maintaining that cultural stranglehold and not risk losing even a cent of our fortune and make more money if possible. Because the definitive truth about Heritage Foundation and oil and oil tycoons is that, technically speaking, not technically speaking, practically speaking, the world has no need for them. The constant drilling for oil and relentless ownership of resources is what caused the climate change. So, in order to survive, we have to find alternatives to fuel-based engines and gas, which we do have, and they know that we do have that. That's why they tried to destroy it from the infancy, from the conceptualization thereof. And the same applies to religion. Really, we don't really need fundamentalism in our religion, in our faith.
Damn it!
So I hope that this frank conversation at least clarified a few things about bigotry, why hate groups are so powerful, because they receive huge finances from even more powerful, rich conservative entities, and their agenda is, at the end of the day, very simple: to have power, to keep that power, and never to relent it.
In other words, take the cake from the poor and eat it too. And those that they can make suffer.
Yes.
That's pretty much how I see it, honestly.
Well, yes, they obviously hate the poor, but this always comes down to money and to status. You cannot even begin to fathom how powerful and so above consequences the oil industry still is in this day and age. And the reason why we seem to be powerless to stop them is because they have so many politicians and political organizations and the occasional hate group under their pockets. And Rupert Murdoch is their best friend. So yes, next time somebody tells you that, the transphobic might not be also a misogynistic dirtbag, think again. There is a good chance they might be all those, and even racist too, and classist, and definitely a white woman named Karen on occasion.
And if they're not that, then they're misguided and don't believe the truth of the situation, of what is on show, or what is before their very eyes.
Oh, so you mean the MAGA people, then?
Basically, I'm saying this kind of ties into my theory that about the fine art of brainwashing.
Oh yes, there is an even better word for that. It's called indoctrination.
Yes, you may think that you're free and that you believe the guy because you think you've seen the truth, but the truth has many sides to it that, let's just say, can be, let's say, corrupted, twisted.
Fake news.
Yeah, and you know how that got about?
Badly.
Yes, but there's a very big reason why it happened. Because the news media and outlets, while they were covering all of Trump's supporters being bad people, meanwhile, the people who were on the fence or were not considering Trump, basically saw something that was not being covered by journalists, and that was the Democrats' sides and supporters attacking Republicans on the streets, and even with photo evidence of a Republican Trump-supporting facility being burnt to the ground that was not covered by the news. So, most of the people who saw this saw it as a, there must be some truth to what is being said here because they're not covering this. So, it is the elite going against this one guy, sort of thing, discrediting him.
There is a lot that the privately owned, I need to stress this, all the news media in America are privately owned, hence why CNN and Fox News are the way they are. There is a lot that they don't cover. They stopped covering the Black Lives protests after a while they were going on because the rich people that own them were not happy about them. So really, you can't really trust anybody. You cannot trust the mainstream media, you cannot trust the politicians, you most certainly cannot trust anything the GOP says or does. It is both a minefield and a political hellscape. Really, how best can you describe an electoral result that manages to be both a barely earned victory for one side and a catastrophic defeat for the other side? How does that make mathematical sense to you?
It honestly doesn't, but...
It doesn't! And that's the problem. For the rest of us in the world, this makes no bloody sense.
I just... like I said before, it seems like as if we have a situation where we have the people who are going against the truth, and the people who are uncovering the truth, and the people who are brainwashed by the lies.
They never learn.
Nothing ever good comes from the blind worshipping of a political or historical figure. And that is the problem here. That's what led to the MAGA crowds. But the real truth of the matter is that the MAGA crowds themselves are not enough, really, to support a presidency. What allowed Trump to become president in the first place was, well, really all the advantages he already had in this election. The only difference is that 4 years of him traumatized and enraged enough people that the turnout was really big in the elections. People turned out en masse to vote him out of office because their hatred for him and everything is said and done in 4 long years was beyond reprehensible. For many people, in fact, a Trump presidency or a continued Trump presidency was literally a matter of life and death. And I'm not exaggerating, and I'm not just talking about the COVID cases going through the roof into space, basically. I'm talking about his vile fascist ideologies and how they affect less privileged non-white people in that large country. So once again, the turnout was massive, not because they liked the candidate that was chosen for them by the oh-so-wise liberals. No. It's because their hatred for the other guy, the Republican abomination, was so much bigger than that the people on top could even begin to comprehend.
I'm going to finish this rant off with this, because I would like there to be a bit of hope in this, despite the obvious power gap between us people who are trying to live life freely and without hurting anybody. People want to hurt me, want to hurt you, want to hurt your friends, and everybody you love. But at the end of the day, no matter what, you have to remember that they are a thin army these days. They have the power, but they do not have the numbers anymore. That is the thing I am going to hope is still there, because I am living on the idea that these morons, these hateful, spiteful people who will never know true happiness in life are just small potatoes trying to ruin a good thing, ruin progress. And they're just the bottom of a house of cards that are trying to topple the entire cards, so to speak. I have been here, there, and everywhere in my life, so I feel like I know what I'm talking about, and with how many people I've met in my time. So, like I said, I am going off by the fact that what I am thinking is going on here is that the minority that won't give up, and we need to make sure that they have no chance to come back, and we kill them off in the next generation or two. Not literally, figuratively.
Well, speak for yourself, Devar. I have my chainsaw here, and my cannon over there, and I think I have my guillotine in the basement. I'm ready to eat the rich if the time comes. Yum, 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 yum. Everybody's delicious when you cook them the right way.
Yes. Just keep in mind who your allies are, essentially, and be vigilant. You know,
But, Devar, what if there's an imposter among us?
you think it's the time to make that sort of joke in this point?
Well, honestly, I don't want to end this podcast on such a dour note. I want to lift people's spirits, because we're also here to have fun.
Yeah.
After we don't have fun for one whole hour.
Yeah.
So I have prepared something special for all of you. It's the return, everybody, of your favorite segment of the podcast, Madhog reads a thing.
What's the thing this time?
It's a short thing, first of all. But it's a neat little thing, nonetheless. This goes out to all the Elder Scrolls fans out there. Keep on farming those acrobatic skills. You know who you are. I am going to read to you The Lusty Argonian Maid. Act 4, Scene 3, continued. Lifts her tail. Certainly not, kind sir. I am here but to clean your chambers. Crantius Colto. Is that all you have come here for, little one? My chambers? I have no idea what it is you imply, master. I am but a poor Argonian maid. So you are, my dumpling, and a good one at that. Such strong legs and shapely tail. You embarrass me, sir. Fear not, you are safe here with me. I must finish my cleaning, sir. The mistress will have my head if I do not. Cleaning, eh? I have something for you. Here, polish me spear. But it is huge. It could take me all night. Plenty of time, my sweet. Plenty of time. End of Act 4, Scene 3. Act 7, Scene 2. Continued. My goodness, that's quite a loaf. But however shall it fit my oven? The loaf isn't ready for baking, my sweet. It has yet to rise. If only we could hurry that along, how would I accomplish such a task? Oh, my foolish little Argonian maid, you must use your hands. You wish me to knead the loaf? Here? Of course. But what if the mistress catches me? Your loaf was meant to satisfy her appetite. Don't fret, my delicate flower. I'll satisfy the mistress's cravings later. Very well, but I'm afraid my oven isn't hot enough. Wink. It could take hours. Plenty of time, my sweet. Plenty of time. End of Act 7, Scene 2. That's all there is to this, unfortunately. So, in case you didn't know, this is not fanfiction. This is an official piece of literature present in the Elder Scrolls games. Since Morrowind, in fact.
That is... that sure is something, a piece of literature.
Yes, it's a really nice, funny Easter egg included in these games. Honestly, one of the few things that still give personality and charm to the series. The existence of this literature as an official piece of literature, no less, which is basically scalie smut, by all intents and purposes, in a AAA gaming franchise. It fills me with joy, honestly. Without this, the only element to give personality to the series would be its glitches and bugs and graphical debauchery, as it were.
Oh, dang, I was so close to the health.
Right. So I think we've recorded enough of a podcast, don't you agree?
I'm just trying to see if I can get through this arena fight.
Oh, you are still stuck in that one level, aren't you?
Yes.
Well, this is where the game starts to be hard, as far as I remember.
Yes, this game is starting to get a little much. Oh no, I need to get something else out. Whip it out, the laser.
Please don't say whipping out, kind sir. I'm just a humble maid.
Do not worry. I can whip it out quite nicely. And smoothly.
So I hope that brought joy to all of you for at least 5 minutes. This is the time where we wrap the podcast up.
Yeah.
So, thanks for joining us, everybody. You can find me at Adriano Bordoni1 on Twitter and on this very YouTube channel. And you can find the VAR at the VAR Arkvaron, also on Twitter, if he bothers to ever post anything at all.
Yeah, I have been trying to get back into Twitter, yeah.
Honestly, you should keep away from Twitter. You are one of the few survivors. You escaped the asylum. Why would you want to go back in it?
Oh wait, I think I did it. I think I'm coming home, Ma. I'll just grab this health. And is this the end of the level? Please let it be the end of the level. You've opened the door for me. Wait, let me save. I want to save. I want to bask in the glory that I've survived. I survived 2020. Please let me
That's... Okay,
yes!
that's a bit much.
Yes! I survived! Serious Sam!
Okay. I didn't realize you were so emotionally invested in this.
Oh, okay. Okay, so Sam's going up to an altar. He sees a thing. He's picking it up. And it sparkles.
So it's every other cutscene in the game, essentially.
Yes, it sparkles because it's Twilight Sparkle's cutie mark.
Okay, we really need to end this podcast now. You're starting to lose it.
Yes, so, okay guys, we'll be heading out now, so you take care.
Yes, and also, always remember, Black lives still matter. Just because the monster is out of the White House doesn't mean we solved racism.
Madhog, I think we can say Black lives matter, trans lives matter, gay lives matter, lesbian lives matter.
Keep going.
Every life should matter. But if you're a hateful, spiteful motherfucker, get out of our house.
Then you don't matter.
Yeah, because, like Disturbed said in Who Taught You How to Hate, if you live that way, then you're dead to everyone.
Yes. And also remember, the next time you want to read a good, nice, swell, little bad story to your children, read them The Last Argonian Maid. It's made for the whole family.
It's totally for the whole family.
Yes. Oh my! What a huge loaf of bread you have! Let me knead it! Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo-hoo. And then you cut to her literally kneading a loaf of bread. Never seen that joke before. Good night, everybody!
Take care.
Hello again, everybody. This is Madhog again for the end blurb of this podcast, which I just decided it needs one. I just want to briefly do a sort of a what is the term for it? A shout out. Yes, that's what the kids say, right? A shout out to a comic that inspired me specifically to read The Last Argonian Maid on this podcast. That comic is a web manga titled Modern Mogal. There is a lot I could say about this manga. It's in many ways the best possible version of a monster girl manga, and ideally the best possible version of the entire trend of the monster girl craze, if you will. The trend of the craze, that sounds redundant, but you get the point. It still has its problems in terms of tone and some very low-hanging ecchi jokes and some other more morbid jokes that become worse as soon as the world in this manga gets expanded upon and it starts to have its own rules. Contradictions here and there, some dubious use of words and excuses to write specific side stories, but other than that, I think this manga is overall relatively enjoyable and also very funny on occasion, and there is a particular segment in this overarching slice of life fantasy world setting that amuses me to an even bigger degree, and that is specifically a segment dedicated to a 1700s dragon maid. Obvious reference is obvious. A full-on scalie dragon maid, in that sense, that is accidentally sexy in everything she does, and comedy emerges from that shtick, and I think it's actually the funniest segment in the whole manga. And I wanted to do a brief shout out to that, because, well, it reminded me of The Last Argonian Maid from the Elder Scrolls series, hence why I decided to read it. So why not just give credit where credit is due? This is a sexy comedy that's actually both funny and sexy. So I have to give major props for that. Go read it, or not. I will leave certain amounts of links in the doobly-doo, as well as the proper credit of whomever wrote this. because, you know, I can't remember it on the spot. Professional, I know. And I think that about covers it. Thanks again for joining us on this rather experimental, heavily flawed episode. Again, not for what we said, but for the audio issues. That's what bugs me the most as a self-proclaimed perfectionist, but not really. Wink. Good night, everybody.